Hello and welcome to the morning briefing here at the Rangers Review with myself, Jonny McFarlane. Today I'm delighted to be joined by the Herald's Chris Jack. Welcome, Chris.
Morning, Jonny. How are we?
Good, mate. Good. Looking forward to a day packed full of Rangers action. We've got the press conference coming up at 1-ish, 12:45-ish. We've got a player and the manager, so we've got that to look forward to. So despite there not being that much Rangers news out there, I'm hoping by mid-afternoon we'll have more to get our teeth into on the website. But for now, the big story I think that's been talked about a fair amount is this new addition to the Super League, or the developments with the Super League. Now it looks like there's going to be a lot more clubs involved. The Premier League clubs in England have clearly said that they're not going to be continuing with it, but we know that some of the biggest clubs in Europe, primarily Barcelona, Real Madrid and Juventus, are wanting to press ahead. And now it turns out that they're looking at bringing in a lot of teams. I think it's 50 have been sent invites from other leagues in Europe as a way of circumnavigating the negativity, I think, that surrounded this. You'd have to imagine, if we're talking about the top 50, by any measure, Rangers and Celtic would be involved in that. So you would have a Scottish element there. Chris, we're of an age where we've been reading these stories for a number of years.
A long time now.
Let's put it kindly. I remember David Murray talking about the inevitability of the European Super League at least 20 years ago, perhaps longer. We've seen the Atlantic League. We've seen the initial Super League come through. Is there anything about this that makes you think that there's a bit more to it? Or do you think there's an inevitability about this? Where are you at with the whole Super League idea and Rangers' involvement in it?
From a Rangers perspective, I would put it in the same camp as the Old Firm to England chat, as something I don't particularly like, I don't particularly want to see. And ultimately, I don't think it would be good for the clubs. If you think Rangers and Celtic, because they will get lumped together, they're clubs that are used to winning things. They're clubs that are used to being dominant in their own countries. And as the Champions League has shown this season, certainly for Rangers, when you try and compete against these clubs whose budgets are just way, way in excess of anything that they can cope with, Rangers can't win games. Now, they might be able to compete over the odd 90 minutes, but the fans that turn up to Ibrox every single week do so because they know at the end of the season there's a fair chance they're going to have something to celebrate. Rangers is a club that is built on success, is a club that has to have success, challenges for leagues every season, challenges for cups every season, and I don't really see, the obvious financial benefits aside, I don't really see what's in it for us going into this type of environment where even if you are bracketed amongst the 50 super clubs, if you want to call it that, the rich are going to get richer. The likes of Rangers may get slightly richer, but still never anywhere near enough to be able to compete with your Man Cities if the Premier League clubs are a bit into it. Certainly not with your Barcelonas and Real Madrids and the likes of Juventus. I don't think it's any surprise that the clubs that are really driving this are the ones that have got real financial issues, and they're just seeing it as I can get rich quick scheme. Not something that I think Rangers should be getting involved in, and hopefully it doesn't come to fruition. If it does, I'd be happy to leave these guys to go and enjoy their football, playing their glorified friendlies every so often, and we'll just leave them to it, and Rangers can focus on actually winning things.
Chris, I've got to say, the one thing about it that just strikes me as a little bit odd, right, is the reality of this would be like Rangers versus Copenhagen at first, Rangers versus AZ Alkmaar, right? Is that any more actually interesting than Rangers versus Aberdeen or Rangers versus Hearts? I'd argue it's probably less interesting after you don't have that local bragging rights element to it. After maybe the first year or two, it might be quite novel and new, and obviously there's the ability to go up and down and get yourself into the real top elements of it, or the top areas of it. But it's always the thing that really put me off the Atlantic League was like going up against like Dutch sides, Danish sides, Swedish sides. Is that really much more attractive? I don't think it is.
I think there'll probably be a novelty factor early on. So if you get to go and play Copenhagen one weekend and Alkmaar the next weekend, I think the fans would like it. You get to go and see new places and new cities and see new teams. After a season or so, going back to Copenhagen for the third time, I don't really see the attraction of going back to Alkmaar, going to a Belgian team or maybe a Portuguese team if we move up a wee bit. I think the European football in the last couple of seasons has been great for that, been to a number of great places, seeing new teams come to Ibrox, testing ourselves against teams away from home. That is what European football is all about. It's not about this trying to kind of manufactured ways of bringing teams together. I think the attraction from a supporter's point of view would wane very quickly. Understand the financial benefits of it for the club by all means, but sometimes there's more important things than money.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Robert Robertson coming in saying, Super League, I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. If we're invited, it would be better than playing the same old ungrateful dross every week who don't hide their hatred towards us. Well, that's an interesting position, Robert. We'll, we can move on to Iron Blue. He's having a bit of a pop. Has the review now been sponsored by ScotRail? I think that's a suggestion that we're running a little bit late. I think, to be using Ali McCoy's famous joke, this is the earliest we've been late in quite a long time, so bear with us.
For the record, I was ready at 9:30.
You are. It was me, as usual, holding the thing up. There's no change there. Simple Simon had a pie. Is an argument for less European football to make it matter more? I think that's a decent point, Chris. I remember, as I say, going back to the 90s, European Cup games meant a lot. European Cup finals meant a hell of a lot. The proliferation of TV football means that these games are no longer as special as they once were.
Mm-hmm. I don't see why there would be an appetite from Rangers fans for this type of thing. I think the novelty factor would wear off quickly in terms of the teams that you're playing and the trips you're having to make. Also, the expense of them making those trips as well, which is a lot more expensive to get to Alkmaar than it is to get to Aberdeen. I think at the heart of it, I think from a Rangers perspective, if the team aren't winning every week, how quickly are the fans going to become disengaged with that? Everybody has grown up with a certain standard and a certain expectation of how Rangers as a team perform and play and how successful they are. And if that's not there, it wouldn't really feel like a proper Rangers side that you're going to watch.
Yeah, indeed. Big shout out to Holtz, who's popped in £20 into our pot as a thank you. Keep up the great work, lads, he says. Thanks for that, mate. That's much appreciated. That's a big help to keeping the channel doing what we do every single day. Right, Chris, we're going to move on from this European Super League because I think we've both established that neither of us are big fans and we don't really think it's going to happen. So that probably gives people an indication of where it's at right at this moment. There have been a little bit of consternation in the media this morning. Comments from Gus McPherson at St Johnstone, unhappy with Michael Beale and what he had to say about St Johnstone's pitch. And I think he was talking about Hampden as well, to be quite frank, Chris, when he made the comments after the game against St Johnstone about Cowfields and St Johnstone and Rangers having to play on really, really difficult pitches. Now, Gus McPherson, perhaps as you would expect, kind of coming in to defend his club, defend his groundsman. And he's sort of blasted the comments, to use the parlance, as unprofessional. Now, I kind of felt listening to them that they were kind of throwaway. It wasn't really a criticism of St Johnstone, more about the challenges that the team had faced in the previous two games. Do you think that Michael Beale was out of order saying that, or do you think he was just simply stating what we could all see with our two eyes?
I don't think it wasn't a blast as such. I was there in that interview after St Johnstone game that night, and as you say, Johnny, it was almost like a throwaway thing. It wasn't as if he was asked about the pitch and then went away on a big monologue of how bad it was, and then mentioning also the Hampden surface. They've been at Kelly in the last couple of weeks as well, so obviously not their favourite. So I think it was more just rounding everything into the one throwaway comment. I can understand why St Johnstone might not take it that kindly, and Gus is perfectly entitled to come out and also defend his club and his staff, and I would expect him to do nothing more. But I don't think there was much malice in it from Michael Beale, to be honest. And to be fair, the pitch was terrible that night, so I see why he was unhappy about it. The Daily newspaper guy spoke to James Tavernier after that game as well, and it was on a similar theme of just how difficult a surface it is to play on. And he mentioned, look, they were up there earlier on in the season, found it tricky that afternoon, so they kind of knew what to expect going going there for that Scottish Cup tie. So I don't think that the state of the park would have been a surprise to Rangers on that night. I think it would have been a disappointment, because at Premiership level, there really should be a set standard of how good a pitch is going to be. But there will be mitigating factors for St Johnstone. Also, the weather leading up to that game wasn't great. Has been a lot of games on it. So I think it's maybe a bit of a storm in a teacup, this one.
I do think it is one that the SPFL should look at, Chris. I think you make a great point there about having a basic required standard. And then if clubs don't meet that standard, there being some level of repercussion on it. You know, I mean, you look at Motherwell, for years that pitch was really problematic, and now it's absolutely immaculate. Now, to be fair to Motherwell, I think they've pumped in quite a bit of money to ensure that that pitch is as good as it is. But, you know, I think they deserve to be lauded for that, for actually going out and solving the problem. I think other clubs maybe need to have their hands forced so that they take it a little bit more seriously. I'm no fan of plastic pitches, Chris. I've been banging on about it for a long time. I felt like when we went down to just Livingston in the league, that was a perfect time to go and actually make it part of the SPFL laws that we didn't have plastic pitches. I think it looks terrible for our game on the telly. You rarely see a very, very good game when it's on a plastic pitch. And I do think this is an area Scottish football can improve. And we've got a comment here from Alan Stewart, Laurie Hall. If Darvel can keep a well-maintained grass pitch, and their pitch was absolutely superb against Aberdeen, you saw how good it is there, then every team in the Scottish Premiership can do the same. I find it hard to argue with that.
No, I think it's a good point. I think that night we spoke to Tav, he pointed out the Ross County one as well. And said, look, the weather up at Dingwall 9 times out of 10 is going to be worse than the weather 100 miles or so down the road in Perth. And I think his argument was, well, if Ross County can do it, St Johnstone should be able to do it. And I think I don't know if there's something the SPFL could do in terms of fines or warnings or things, but I think there should be a minimum expectation of how good a top flight pitch is going to be. It's also tricky. You then have to compare the grass pitches to the plastic ones, but you'd imagine that there has to be a certain standard expected of teams at that level. And we see the likes of Darvel, that was a really good surface that night. It made for a really entertaining cup tie. I mean, you then see a junior team like that, a team that at that level being able to produce a surface like that. It makes it hard for the Premiership team to turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, but we can't.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another wee story here that's just popped up on my radar, Chris, that I think is probably worth going into. There's a transfer specialist website called Transfer Room. You could probably tell we're struggling for topics today. And they have estimated that Rangers' value has increased by 12 million with the signing of Nicholas Raskin and Todd Cantwell. It's just an example of how with targeted transfer policy, you can actually really on paper improve what you have in the squad. And I wonder, Chris, just going sort of deeper into this idea of Rangers transfer policy and the window in general, do you think what we're seeing is a move towards Rangers only really moving into the market for players that they feel can improve the starting 11? And would you think that that's a policy that they have to stick with? Or do you think it's just an element of how the circumstances played out this time? For me, you look back over the last 2, 3, 4 transfer windows, there's been a lot of players that have come in that have been project signings or signings that are stopgaps or second and third choices that are to provide competition. But it felt for the first time in a long time, this was a manager going out and identifying 2 players that could improve and develop that starting 11.
I think it's almost a situation Rangers have got themselves in, and they have to go back to almost like the way that Steven Gerrard and Michael Beale built the squad in 2018. The squad clearly wasn't good enough, and they had to bring in guys that were going to take the squad and the team up a level. It's the same type of situation now. The guys, the MD that comes in has to be an improvement on what they've got. They can't have guys that you can maybe say, right, well, in 3-4 seasons, Rangers need better players to help them win leagues and win cups and compete in Europe right now. That was something I know the manager made it clear early on in the window of, I'm not signing players just for the sake of it. Over the last fortnight, week, few days of the window, Rangers would undoubtedly have been offered guys on short-term loan deals, likes of Aaron Ramsey, Amad Diallo. They would have been offered these type of players as quick fixes. Michael Beale knocked that back really early on and said, that's not where we are. We need to build a team, and he kept using the phrase build and build, because he knows it will be a gradual process. He's not going to come in and bring in an entire squad of players and turn them into champions overnight. So I think that's why getting Cantwell and Raskin in January was such an important two bits of business for Rangers, because it allows them to bed in, and it's the first signs of where this squad is going. It's putting quality on the park. It's also putting a bit of value back on the balance sheet, because again, that's something that I think the squad has lost, as likes of Calvin Bassey and Joe Rebo and Nathan Patterson have moved on. Likes of Stephen Davis and Alan McGregor have got a bit older. Tav's older. Conor Golson's older. The actual value of the squad has gone down a wee bit. And in terms of sellable assets, there's probably not that many now as there was a couple of seasons ago. As if you fast forward another couple of seasons, Raskin and Cantwell could be the type of guys that you could flip for very significant profits. So I think there's definitely a strategy there for Rangers, and it's almost going back to the future, going back to what has worked for them previously. And if they can improve the strike rate in terms of getting 8, 9, 10 really good signings in, the squad, the team will naturally improve, hopefully bring more success on the park, but certainly have a benefit off the park as well.
Yeah, and Chris, the big issue, of course, on Saturday was Nicholas Raskin getting those 7 minutes and looking quite impressive. But beyond that, there was also the big talking point that I want to get you on, which is his socks. Where do you stand on Nicholas Raskin's socks? Good or bad?
Bad, and hopefully he's had a stern word in his ear over the course of the week. And when he plays against Partick Thistle this weekend, I expect to see full black socks with red tops and nothing less.
I love to hear it. A man with standards.
Exactly.
See, if Joshua was on, I don't think I'd have got the same response.
Well, I've seen the way that Josh wears his trousers sometimes, so
let's move on. We've got a number of questions coming in now. I've been distracted by my own nonsense patter. Matthew Ross coming in with more nonsense patter. I might add, Chris is looking very dapper today. That's the Rangers Review standard. It's a bit higher than the Rangers Review standard, to be fair.
A man that holds a certain standard is never a bad thing.
Yes, it's definitely the right colour, Chris, which is a good start. Right, we're going to move ahead to talk about Partick Thistle, because I think that's obviously the next game on the list, and an important one. Rangers Cup record, as we know. Yes, the Scottish Cup was lifted last season, but if we're talking over the last decade, then it's awful, and it's something Rangers need to resolve quickly. This is a club where silverware is just expected, it's demanded. So the Scottish Cup is another one that I think Rangers fans will be saying, we expect that to be in the trophy room come the end of the season. And you can't do that if you don't beat the teams that are in front of you at this stage. Chris, I mean, Partick Thistle is a club that you used to report on back in the day. I know it's a long time ago now. It's a good wee club who have had a bit of a mercurial season, it must be said. They've been a bit up and down, haven't they, in that championship? One point they looked like they were really, really going to be in the mix for going up. And we know Ian McCall is a good manager, but it's kind of fallen away a little bit. And then they've had another wee resurgence, and it's been up and down.
They're almost that type of club and that type of team, Thistle. I know that from four or 5 seasons I covered them. They could be excellent one week and fairly rotten the next week. But actually the season that I covered them when they won the championship to get up, that was a really good season to go and watch them. So I'm looking forward to going and seeing them again on Sunday. First time I've actually seen the Jags in action for a while. I think it should be a decent enough test for Rangers, but one you would expect them to come through fairly comfortably. I think with the schedule opening up a wee bit, I don't think Michael Beale really has to worry too much about guys being tired or having too many minutes in the legs. So I think that he can put out a strong team. I don't think it'll be the strongest team, but he can still put out a good side that you expect to go and take care of Thistle relatively comfortably. A good Thistle support heading along to Ibrox by the sounds of it this weekend as well. So no, it should be a good tie, but one just should get through fairly comfortably.
Yeah, and it's probably an opportunity, Chris, to bring in some of those players and get minutes in their legs that haven't featured a lot. But You've also got 2 new signings that are bedding in that you would probably say this is a great opportunity to get Raskin in, for example, from the start. You know, bring him on and give him the opportunity to get 90 minutes in front of the Ibrox crowd and try to understand what's going to be the idiosyncrasies of Scottish football, which we know any foreign player coming in has to learn. They have to learn that, you know, the referees will maybe let a little bit more go than they would in their home country. They have to learn that the fans will get on you if you're not seen to be given 110%. These little things that we always hear foreign players once they leave talk about. I remember, you know, Ronald de Boer saying that, you know, he felt like Rangers fans would shout for him to run and chase a ball, even though he felt like he couldn't get there. You can get away with that if you're Ronald de Boer. Let's be honest. If you've got that sort of continental cool, and if you've been at Barcelona and Ajax and won European Cups, you can get away with it. But not many players are that standard. So would you put Raskin in from the start and give him that opportunity to start bedding in quickly?
I think if you're looking at the cup final coming up in a couple of weeks, if you want Raskin and Cantwell to play in that one, you probably play them on Sunday just to give them another 90 minutes in the legs. Raskin, I think, has to start or at least get a half under his belt. I'd be really surprised if he didn't. As you mentioned, it's a good opportunity maybe for the likes of Adam Devine to come in, Leon King to come in, maybe a Scott Wright, someone like that. We'll find out later on if Kamal Roof's going to be fit. I think there's opportunities in there to use some of the fringe players, give maybe a couple more of the established guys a bit of a rest, like Tav and Goldson if they want it and need it. But I think for the 2 new boys, I'd be surprised if you don't see them for long spells on Sunday. I say with the Celtic game coming up in a couple of weeks, if they are going to play a meaningful part in that game, they need to get up to speed as quickly as possible, because they obviously didn't play a lot of football before they signed on. Raskin has 7 minutes or so under his belt so far. Cantwell, I think, has looked really impressive in the 2 Ibrox games and his Tynecastle cameo. So you might not see him from the start, but I certainly like to see him for a half hour or so. But Raskin, I'd be surprised if he's not one of the first names on the team sheet.
Yeah, I hope so. Hope to see him. That'd be really exciting to get a proper chance to look at him, because those 7 minutes were pretty impressive, but it is just 7 minutes and we have to contextualise these things. DMAC coming in saying Partick sold over 2k in tickets. Fair play. That is a pretty impressive result if that's the case. I haven't seen anything about that, but I'm sure that they'll have sold a few tickets because it's an exciting tie for them. Just quickly, guys, we have got a new subscription offer. Now, it's a very, very good time to subscribe to the website, because if you pay £1, you get 3 months coverage. After that, it goes to the standard $2.99. But also, 1 subscriber, and this includes current subscribers, by the way. So, guys, if you're current subscribers, check your emails. You just fill in a wee form that we send you, and that will give you a chance to win 2 tickets to the League Cup final with Celtic. So we have 2 tickets to give away, very expensively acquired, let me tell you. It was not easy to get them, but we have 2 to give away. So those will go to 1 lucky subscriber to be in with the mix. It's £1, go to the Rangers Review, and then we will send you out an email link, and from that link you'll be able to register, and your name will go into the hat, and it will be drawn a few days before the game itself. So it's a great opportunity to get to what will be a very difficult game to procure tickets for, let me tell you. We've got Hugh Hepburn Duff here saying, Jonny, any news on Lundstrom? I know there's a press conference today. Have you heard if it's serious? Hugh, Rangers keeping very tight-lipped on that, but listen, I'm not a doctor, but when you're walking out of Ibrox in a moon boot, the news probably isn't all that good for the short term. I'm speculating, but just common sense. So we'll wait with bated breath to hear what Michael Beale has to say. But I suspect that we won't be seeing Lundstrom in the days ahead, put it that way. And I'm sure Michael Beale will update us, because there has been a scan and they will know now what the situation is. Anything you want to add to that, Chris, or is that a fair summation of your understanding of it?
No, I think that's fair, Jonny. So we asked Rangers at the start of the week. There was no update on Monday, I think it was. Reports earlier on the week suggested it wasn't quite as bad as first feared, but the manager has been good in terms of his injury update. So I'm sure he'll be asked about it in a couple of hours' time.
Yeah, indeed. Right, we've got 2 more questions that kind of focus on the same thing, Chris. One directly to you, but let me just kind of touch on this before we close. Bob Affett saying, who plays in goals though, Jonny, going forward? And then ALC saying, Chris, what are your thoughts on the year-end position? Major clear out, or will Mick try and hold on to a number of the old guard? I think that those two things are kind of linked in some ways. I would certainly say that there's a number of players that will be leaving at the end of the season, and rightly so, as they look to turn over the squad and invest in new players and free up wages so that they can bring a younger, fresher, new Rangers team in, because this is still effectively the team of Beale and Gerrard and Beale, as opposed to Beale and Gerrard. But you know what I mean. And it's the opportunity in the summer to do that with so many players being out of contract. To me, the goalkeeping situation is the first place that they'll start, or it certainly should be. I don't think Alan McGregor's the answer, and he shouldn't be at 41. It's remarkable that he's played this long. He's still the best keeper at the club, but I don't think that's going to maintain for another season. I think this is the perfect time to call it a day. I don't think John McLaughlin is good enough as a shot stopper, as a Rangers keeper. Very good with the ball at his feet, but we saw, I think, against Ross County, for me, it's just another example where he's letting a goal that's come directly on the back of a mistake, and there's been a few of them. And then Robbie McCrory, that's an interesting one, and we'll find out, I think, once he comes back from injury. I think Michael Beale's going to give him a chance. He said it on numerous occasions. He's gone out of his way to point out that Robbie McCrory's still in the building. He's someone that he'll look at. So I think come the end of the season, we'll have a better understanding of that. I wouldn't be surprised if Robbie McCrory remains as a number 2 and going into the next season, but I'd be surprised if John McLaughlin and Alan McGregor are both still there. What do you think, Chris?
I think the piece, was it Wednesday? I think I did a piece about the goalkeepers. He will need to sign at least one because Alan McGregor will retire. I think he should sign at least 2 because John McLaughlin should be allowed to leave. Whether he signs 3 or not, as you say, Jonny, really depends on how highly they rate Robbie McCrory. The club, I know, do rate him highly. They rated him highly enough to give him a new improved contract not that long ago. I know there's still a bit of debate among some of the fans of whether Robbie is ready to be Rangers number 1. They say, well, he couldn't get a game for Livingston a couple of years ago, and he had loan spells at Morton and Berwick Rangers. All these things have helped shape him into the goalkeeper that he is just now. The injury that he's got has come just at a really, really bad time for him, because I think if he had been fit, the likes of the Thistle game this weekend is the ideal game to put him into, maybe get another couple of games further down the line. I would hope that when he is fit, he does get a chance, because I think it'd be quite unfair to release him in the summer, or say you're not good enough to be number 1 come the summer, if he's not had that run of games, not had that chance to actually go and prove himself. I say the injury that he's got has just come at a really, really bad time for him. So I think a lot depends on whether they see McCrory as number 1. If he is, they're then just signing probably a slightly more experienced backup. If they think McCrory's number 2, they might have to convince him to actually stay, because I think he feels that his time has now come to really stake his claim for that jersey. If they go and sign 2 goalkeepers and they want Robbie to be number 3, he won't be there for very much longer, and he'll move on, because he has to go and play elsewhere. So I think the keeper situation really revolves around how good McCrory is and how good they think he can be, and you then almost can work the rest of it from there in terms of if you're signing a number 1 or a number 2.
Yeah, I feel a bit sorry for Robbie McCrory. I don't know how you feel, Chris, because he came in to 2 huge games. Mm-hmm. People forget how big Alishkert was, and I think, speaking to people at the club, one person said to me that they were kind of watching the Alishkert game from behind the sofa, because it was really, really serious if Rangers didn't get through that match in terms of the financial implications of not reaching the Europa League. Mm-hmm. And that first game, we know, I think it was at Lundstrom that was sent off early doors, and it was a total battle, and they just kind of got there 1-0. And the second game, they were awful, but they got through it, and he didn't have a lot to do, but that was high tension. And if he'd made a mistake, it was a killer. Mm-hmm. And then going up against Celtic, Ange Postecoglou was still finding his feet, but Celtic had a few chances, and he did brilliantly. Certainly one of the better players on the pitch for Rangers that day. And then has those 2 huge, high-profile, high-pressure games, and then comes out the team. Never to be seen again. But unfair, you could argue.
I think his situation last summer was interesting as well, and it was all tied in again to the Alan McGregor situation. If McGregor hadn't had signed his new contract, it would have been McLaughlin versus McCrory to be number one. And I think Robbie would have fancied his chances in that situation. When McGregor then signs, he then becomes a natural number 3 option. It puts him back. I know at that time he was kind of swithering over whether Rangers was the right club for him to be at. Decided that it was. Decided that he would get his chance. Signed his new contract. And I think the change of manager came at a good time for him. The injury has also come at a bad time for him. I still think he's got potential to be a Rangers number one. Knows the club, was a huge fan of the club, knows the standards, has worked under some really good goalkeepers, worked under Colin Stewart. I think he deserves his crack. It's just whether that can come before the end of the season. Michael said last week he's still 3-4 weeks away. Maybe then looking at 2-3 games after the split, maybe to pitch him in. It's not a lot of time for somebody to say, I'm going to be your number one next season. But I think it will come a stage of either you use him or you lose him. And if you lose him and he goes and really establishes himself somewhere over the next 2-3 seasons, Rangers then might be left kicking themselves. So the goalkeeper situation is a really, really interesting one. But I think it's a thanks but no thanks to John McLaughlin. You wish him well for the future, and he's done a good job for Rangers. He's been a good backup keeper, and obviously all the plaudits that Alan McGregor will get when he retires will be thoroughly merited.
Oh yeah, no doubt in Alan McGregor is legendary status, and that won't change on the back of an average season. That's all it's been. It's been an average season for him. It's not been a terrible season. Some people say that, but it's just not been to. He set such incredible high standards, Chris, that if you don't maintain those, you're just not superhuman, And at 41, it's, I don't know how he's even performing to the level he is at the moment. To be honest, it's remarkable and real testament to the way he's obviously trained and kept himself in physical shape, because very, very few people are still performing at this level at that age. The only one I can think of off the top of my head that's really done it to this age at Rangers is Davy Weir. And God, he was really creaking age 41. But I know it's more difficult if you're on the pitch on the grass itself. But McGregor still, I think, is capable of producing the magic. I think just the more mundane is starting to be more of his problem now. I think if you're putting him into an Old Firm game or whatever, I still wouldn't have any concerns or any qualms. The only thing I would say about Robbie McCrory, Chris, is just he is 25 in March. So I think that backs up everything you've said. He for his own career, he just can't stay any longer being second fiddle. He has to start playing. That's just his agent will be telling him that, his parents will be telling him that. He needs to get out at 25. It's a short career. Goalkeepers, they can play on till their early 40s or certainly their late 30s. But I mean, at 25, you've not got that long a run of getting games and earning the money that you need to earn to sustain you for the rest of your life. Because we all know if you're a footballer, if you're not going to go into coaching or whatever, you need to use your money wisely and make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your family for a longer period than just your playing career itself.
I think even for his international aspirations as well, I know Steve Clarke rates him real highly. Steve Clarke sees him as potentially the guy that can go and succeed. Craig Gordon and be that long-term Scotland goalkeeper. He's not going to be a long-term Scotland goalkeeper if he's not playing them. So he really has to either find a move that's going to give him that platform, or find a way to really force himself into the first team jersey at Rangers. I think if he can, and he can really prove people wrong and prove himself, he can be the Rangers and Scotland goalkeeper for the foreseeable.
Chris, we're going to end with a bit of information that I wasn't aware of. It's essentially an exclusive, and you're going to have to go and start beefing away on this right away, because I wasn't aware of this. It's big news. Manuel Neuer is available in the summer. He's fallen out with Bayern, so this is something we need to think about.
I've heard they had pictures of Stefan Klos on his bedroom wall when he was a kid.
Beale is looking for someone that's good with the ball at his feet. So, put two and two together. It's Neuer, isn't it? I said Neuer. I can't pronounce German names. I've struggled with it all my life. Bayern, but I say Bayern. I don't know. It's an East Coast thing. I just can't do it, Chris. It's like Ajax, and I don't know why. I'm not able to do it.
I'll go and find out if there's anything in that particular link. You've got 4 months to practice it before his unveiling press conference.
Yes, look out for the exclusive in the Herald tomorrow. If it's true or not, we'll have you sorted on that one. Right, okay, guys, we're going to call it a day there. Thanks to Chris for joining me. It's been very pleasurable 34 minutes, even though there wasn't an awful lot to talk about in terms of news. We will, of course, be back after the game and before the game, actually, against Partick Thistle. And then back with our regular Monday to Friday scheduling. I've been chided so much about being late that I'm going to make an absolute effort to get started at 9:30 on the dot next week, guys. So you'll be all happy to hear that. Whether or not I can stick to it is another story, but we will see. But until next time, guys, thanks for listening. And don't forget that you can win 2 tickets to the Rangers versus Celtic Cup final at Hampden just by subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, check your inbox, check your junk, because we've sent you an email giving you the opportunity to sign up for it, just the same way as we did with the Seville tickets. So you can find that there. Thanks.